Hey guys, welcome to Executive Espresso. David Lovejoy is here, and he's joining me to break down the power of reinvention. I know in this topsy turvy world, the advent of AI, robots. I guess we're going to Mars. Some of you guys may wind up living there. And how do you reinvent yourself when business or life takes a downturn? David's going to be talking about that. He's going to be talking about managing risk taking. He's going to be bringing some global business insights because he is fresh from the front lines of travel, leadership, entrepreneurship. So, welcome to this 18-minute high octane interview where you're going to learn about some key business lessons, from running tours for VIPs and global leaders, how to pivot when your industry may collapse overnight, and lots of other goodies. And so let me get David up here. David, it's really good to see you here today. Give us some background, man. How'd you get into all this stuff?
Well, thank you, Dr. Heath. Great to be here again. Where to begin? I guess speaking of pivoting, I'll start with tourism. Tokyo was trying to get the Olympics in 2016, and they missed out. And then we were rooting for them for 2020, and they got it. And we were just building year over year towards that. The company I worked for helped with marketing for the 2019 Rugby World Cup, which, no offense to rugby, but that was kind of the dry run into the 2020 Olympics season. So we were really anticipating an Olympics that was going to be the best in the world. It was going to be Japan's busiest tourist season. And then months before, the pandemic happened and the entire industry just disappeared overnight. It was such like whiplash. And then I created this value matrix in order to figure out what to do next and where to go, and just dove in and kept on swimming. And here I am. I guess we can dive in anywhere you like in there.
Yeah, man, that's fascinating. That's quite the change in life. You moved all the way around the world. What kind of did you have to have some cultural adjustments? I mean, was it like maybe living on a foreign planet or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, not to get too deep in an 18-minute conversation, but growing up, I kind of felt like an outsider. So whatever kind of became a necessary tool as far as like acclimating, I started to notice that people outside the family saw me in a way that was very different and on average more favorable than people inside my in group. And so that kind of gave me the impetus to leave my home. And in so doing, I had to figure out how to survive. I was making noises and pointing like a monkey because I was illiterate and couldn't speak. And I picked up a book and started studying. And I eventually was able to string together sentences and then realized that those sentences still didn't make sense because you had to understand the culture and how to make a joke, how to like make an argument, how to do this and that. And, after a decade or so, you start to become more than what you were before.
Wow, a decade or so. Wow, that's amazing. What kind of kept you going though? I mean, what really fueled you to not give up? I mean, 10 years, that's a long time to acclimate. What really kept you going?
I would say the like top of mind would be curiosity. There's just an insatiable fascination and curiosity for learning more. At first, there's like multiple layers, but there was if I were to break curiosity into two layers, there's a curiosity like I would like to see. I expect and I would like it's kind of like you're hoping for something like a new experience, but you also kind of have an expectation of how you'd like it to play out. And then there's the like true curiosity, I think, that's just like letting go of the outcome. Like whatever happens, I'm just moving in this direction. So there is an element of each of those. But the one that I think what like kind of where I saw them intersecting was about 2 or 3 months into my first stint in Japan. I intended to live there for at least a year just to see what it's like. And it was my first time. I think at that point, it was the longest I'd ever lived outside of my hometown, home country for that matter. And I was in the back of a taxi and I saw this like 3-year-old maybe walking by with his family. And I realized like that 3-year-old, like it knows more than I know about like this world that we're in now. And that was really humbling because I was somewhat freshly graduated from university. I felt intelligent, world's my oyster, all this stuff. And everything you are and everything it's like being a millionaire in a foreign currency. Like there's no, there's no like way to use it. And I realized I need to start anew. And then somewhere in that process, I don't know, maybe a few months into it, let's say, I can't really remember exactly, less than a year, I realized that there are many different like realities, many different frameworks. If I were to go to Korea or India or China or Brazil or whatever, Nigeria, there's going to be different kind of mindsets, different cultures, and then of course I'm being somewhat simplistic. In each of those countries, there's like microcultures, etc., as you all know. And I was just we all kind of know this in some sense, but there's like different levels of knowing when you're like living it and confronted with it, and like you can't get milk without knowing it. Yeah, you start to realize like I know nothing. Um, and I think that was kind of healthy to like that splash of cold water. Because I think in some sense that's true, even if you're staying still. You just take it for granted because you can kind of go on autopilot to a large extent. But there's a lot of reality happening around you that you're unaware of. And so that was just a humbling experience that made me kind of somewhat more attuned to the lack of knowledge, I suppose.
That is really amazing. I love your comparison with being a 3-year-old, or the 3-year-old knowing more than you did, because I think the mistake a lot of people make is that they get into a new field, a new industry, a new culture, and they expect to be a teenager or young adult or even an adult when they haven't even gone through infancy in that culture, or infancy in that corporate culture, or infancy in whatever educational system. People want to start out at level number 10 and they not even gotten to level number 2. I recall when I was in China, speaking of cultural differences, you could literally be in a village in a valley that the people in that village had not had contact with the other village a few miles away in another valley in maybe a century. And even that small distance created a huge difference when it came to culture and understanding. And so I've never heard curiosity broken down into those two levels, but curiosity, I think, is the first hurdle we have to get over. I would say curiosity versus catastrophizing. Did you do some catastrophizing? I mean, did you have some sabotaging thought processes when you were getting acclimated to that culture?
Yes, short answer, for sure. I inherited or was steeped in some. I took some with me unconsciously. It's taken decades to kind of well, there's probably still some I'm becoming aware of, but I certainly have become more aware of kind of like being split somewhat into feeling inferior to the environment, and also needing to compensate for that, and trying to be a perfectionist. And I think neither is true. And so it's a matter of kind of bringing those in. Like if you think of like when you're at the eye doctor and they're like, which is better, A or B? And you're kind of like getting closer and closer to let's say 20/20 vision, or more accurate vision. So yeah, I'd say for sure I brought some self-limiting beliefs, self-sabotaging kind of mindsets.
What was one of the biggest things that helped you pivot, when that industry collapsed? What are a couple things that really you can remember that helped drive that pivot? And by the way, Hitch, thank you for being here. Hitch has assessed David's IQ, and he says that your IQ seems very high. And yeah, I mean, I want to say, I think it's the glasses. I think that glasses
Yeah, they
really
add a few IQ
increase
points.
IQ perception. It's why I wear these glasses.
Yeah,
Plus,
same.
they're colorful. But Hitch, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, other guys, for joining. If you have a question for David, drop it in the chat. I'll bring it on the screen. He would love to answer questions. If you have questions about my coffee, I'm always up for answering questions about my coffee. It's the COTD, coffee of the day, so you can ask anything, but try not to embarrass us. But yeah, what are some of the things that really seem to help you pivot your mindset, pivot your behavior toward the success that you've experienced?
I think two things come to mind. One is a survival instinct. I can't take credit for that. I just don't want to die. And then kind of counter to that, or not, maybe not counter, but sometimes it almost seems like it runs counter, is just this thirst for adventure, new experiences. And so once again, these two kind of tensions, or this tension between the two rather. And yet I kind of rode that wave. I'm like, it doesn't, like, everything's gone, so it kind of doesn't matter. It's like a clean slate, so you can start again. And once you, I mean, there's many ways to do this. I don't mean to say that my way was particularly special. I mean, it's special to me, but for what it's worth, Japanese is a very different language and culture to an English speaking language and culture. So the way I looked at it is if I've already like navigated that, I could kind of go anywhere. Like going to Mexico or going to France is probably not as extreme, or not more extreme, than what I've already done. And like I mentioned, the whiplash from having your industry just disappear. And again, right before it was supposed to be, it's like right before the Oscars, you're like nominated or whatever, and then all of a sudden, just the movie industry's gone. And it's like, it's a what? I was like, I wanted that.
Whiplash,
And so,
psychological whiplash.
yeah, yeah. So that was kind of the two things I think, and then I just figured I don't know if you recall or if it was the same for everyone, but there was this sense of like confusion in the ambiguity of the time. Like we knew like definition what a pandemic was, but none of us had like gone like, what does this mean? Is this? I remember, I forget if it was some news channel. They were asking like, I think it was Bill Gates at the time. It might have been CNN. It was actually. I think it was Sanjay Gupta and Anderson Cooper were interviewing him, and maybe there's another person there on the call. And they said, "So are we going to be back to normal in like what 2-3 weeks?" And Bill Gates kind of did just that. And he's like, "We haven't even peaked yet. Like, this is going to be a long time or something like that." And I was like, "What's going on? Like, how long are we going to?" And so I was like, "This could be months." I did. We got a stipend, me and the other tour guides, and I was like, I was thinking I'd give it a couple months, but then after a couple months, when it didn't seem like anyone had any answers and the answers kept changing kind of thing, I realized like we don't really know. And if we don't know, what should we do? And I said, we should do whatever we would do if you were just starting anew and you didn't have any like attachments to anything or any expectations. And I always had this like seed in the back of my mind that I wanted to go back to school for a couple of reasons. One, insecurity, like just having that like extra validation of an institution, or look, I did this. Like I might not feel like I'm good enough, but at least like I have this thing. And then there was the curiosity as well. I like going to libraries, reading books and stuff like that, being in the academic atmosphere. And I thought like I didn't know what to do. So I thought maybe in that environment, I would discover some answers. So I went to business school.
I love it. I love it. I'm really kind of stacking up these techniques, David, that you're talking about. And in my language of my profession, we would say that you're decatastrophizing, and then you're turning the decatastrophizing into curiosity, and then you're turning the curiosity, leveraging that to educate yourself. And so, really, there's no such thing, folks. Thank you guys for listening. But for the audience, I don't think there's any such thing as a just a moment of pivot. I think that pivot is by degree. I think that we mentally prep ourselves to pivot, because I remember also I was doing assessments for DCFS, the Division of Children and Family Services up in Missouri. And I talked to a colleague of mine and I said, "Hey, have you heard about this thing? It's called," I don't remember what it's called. And he said, "Oh, COVID." "Yeah, yeah, that's it. That's it. I've heard about that. What do you think about it?" He said, "Ah, that's not a big deal. That you don't have to worry about that." And I thought, well, okay. And then I started hearing more about it. So immediately my brain started pivoting. And by the way, your brain starts pivoting at levels of the unconscious where you're unaware that your mind is pivoting. What a wonderful thing that the brain can do to begin pivoting outside, off camera of your conscious awareness. And so I kind of let it go, and I heard more and more cases, and I started having people call and say, "Hey, we're not coming in, we're sick," or whatever. And then I started hearing more and more horror stories and things like that. And so it was really not a moment of pivoting. It was a long pivot from a business that I had done at the time for like 3 decades. And here's the other thing, decatastrophizing, you're doing that the whole time, because I had never, let's see, I don't think I've ever done at the time very many sessions on camera. They were all knee to knee, toe to toe, face to face, but so as weird as it is to say now, I was really, really apprehensive about doing it, thinking, well, it just can't be done. I'm going to lose my business. And so there's always that negativity bias. And so you guys go back and replay what David said, because this is something that you can put in your toolkit for pivoting if such things ever come up. And then what I want to get to in the next few minutes, and by the way, Hitch had a great question about, please ask David, what is the best piece of advice that you have ever received? And I want to get to that, save the best for last here in about 2 or 3 minutes at the end of the show. Invite some friends. We're live streaming on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and X. And so share it out. Good to have you guys here. But the next piece of that pyramid, I would say, is building some of those international connections and then leveraging those connections for success. So how did you get into reaching out? Because I think that often the entrepreneur mindset, the innovator mindset gets too much in an echo chamber and kind of closes in. But that's a recipe for failure. So how did you start putting yourself out there and reaching out?
Good question. Well, I like conscious creation inspired comment there. Life throws you in, sink in fear or swim. It's very much that. I had massive imposter syndrome when I first started tourism. We led 2-week tours all over the country, more or less by ourselves. We had home offices that would send us dossiers, but like we never really interfaced face to face with colleagues. So it's just you, 14 strangers from around the world show up at a hotel. You get some money put in your bank account. You go meet them, and you're traveling together for 2 weeks. And these people are CEOs from other countries around the world. So you're learning a little bit about different cultures, different industries, and stuff like that. And one thing I saw was the transferability of knowledge from one domain to another. So you'd have like an architect or an importer, exporter, or some lawyer or any industry, and you're together like 14 people in a group typically, and you're having these long conversations over train rides or dinner or walking around some temples or something like that. And you're watching them be surprised that they were that fascinated about another industry, or that something they knew in their industry could be transferable or inspiring to someone in another. And I'm living in that environment, and I didn't realize what I was picking up at the time or how useful it would become. I think that's true in many things. I don't think it's just that. For me, it was that. So just a note to the audience, just keep in mind that you're picking up things that will be useful later. I guess I'll just pause there.
No, I love that. I love that. The word that I really is would say where I come from, my neck of the woods, is cabbaged on to grabbed a hold of was
Like that.
synergy. I worked as a team, but I was just one part of that team. And everybody else on that team, we had an expert nurse as a part of the team, an expert dietitian, a recreational therapist. Sometimes we'd have an environmentalist, or we were cross-trained to do these things. I was the psychology, mental health part of that team on continuous quality improvement. And so, yeah, at some point after all the do-it-yourself stuff, what's the saying? A journey traveled with others is a journey cut in half, or half as long. So you have to get that team on board. Well, David, before we get to the final questions here, how can folks get in touch with you? Where are you located on social media?
Oh, thank you very much. Well, you've got the handle there at the bottom. I'm on X. Give me a shout out, David Lovejoy X. I'm also on LinkedIn, David Lovejoy. There's a few, so maybe go on X if you can't find me on there, and DM me or something. But happy to chat entrepreneurship or travel or anything you like.
Well, so a quick triple shot, and then we're going to get to Hitch's question. Hitch runs some great spaces on IQ. It's good to have him here. He raises IQ in any room that he walks into, so thanks for being here, Hitch. A quick triple shot. What would you say is the top biggest mindset struggle, that you're currently having?
Well, it's got better, but I would say it's still that letting go of trying to be perfect and just do.
Yep.
The
Yep.
data's in the motion.
Getting it done. Yep. Getting it done is better than getting it perfect, always. Number two, what did you most have wrong about your industry back in the day?
Well, I could almost repeat the last answer, but I'll say thinking that you can ever know enough.
Ah,
I would pour over books. I'd study those dossiers I got, like 70 pages. So I thought, okay, this client's going to be like this or want to see this. So I got this prepared. And you'd be asked like, what is literally, I got asked this once, what type of concrete is in this building? And like, you don't know. And there's like this knock-on effect of, oh no, I don't know anything. And it's like, why aren't they asking any of the questions that I prepared for? I prepared so much. And it's like, that's life. It's so, there's so many things that you don't realize. And that's part of the beauty and the frustration of collaborating with others is you're going to be, you're going to have your blind spots exposed, and just keep learning, keep learning, keep learning.
Yeah, guys, that's why you're the expert. Those of you out there who want to be experts, experts isn't about knowing all the questions you're going to be asked. It's the talent at which you respond to questions that you don't anticipate being asked. And a great response can be, I don't know. That is a wonderful question, an important question. And so I'm going to find out the best answer for you. And finally, what's your best mindset hack?
Uh, Well, like I mentioned, just do, like action creates the data. And my mindset hack to do that is I discovered this in tourism. I sometimes get like nervous on stage, like public speaking, or even like asking for things on behalf of myself. But I realized that it was really not an issue at all if I was asking on behalf of others or if I was serving others. So like when on stage, I look at the audience and I think, okay, what do they need? Like what do I have that could be of use to them? Because many of my clients in the tourism job I mentioned were intimidating professionally. Like they knew so much, they'd done so much more than I had, and I was like, what could I possibly do? Like, why am I leading them for 2 weeks? Like they should be leading me, etc. And I started to notice that I was able to provide value, and they appreciated that, and they gave me really positive feedback and helpful feedback, and I built on that. And so I realized, rather than getting stuck in my own head, why don't I just look at the environment and try to be of use to it, and kind of, I guess, ride that out, see where that leads you.
That's amazing. And what I've discovered in my field is that I am always more aware of my own gaps in knowledge than I'm aware of other experts' gaps in knowledge. So it's really not what it appears. Most normal people with healthy brains, and I emphasize healthy because insight is one of those healthy things. Really, their deficiencies and their gaps in knowledge are just glaring to them. But just because it's glaring to them doesn't mean everyone else sees it. Uh, Knowing your knowledge gaps is a really, really healthy thing. Interpreting those knowledge gaps in a way that's healthy for you is something altogether different. And finally, we're going to get to Hitch's question here. What is the best piece of advice, David, that you have ever received?
Well, I wish it was some famous author or something like that. Maybe it will be one day. But it was a fellow colleague who was a model who was moonlighting as a tour guide in between gigs, just something he wanted to do in Japan. And I was venting like after work about this or that. And he just kind of shrugged in a really chill way. He was always really chill and grounded. And he just said, make a decision. I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you either decide to do this or you decide to do that, like make a decision. And I mean, maybe that sounds simple to you, but I was like, what? Like we can decide? Like I thought we were just stuck with like whatever's in front of us. And that was profound. I'm still dipping into that one.
I love that. I would say that mine is you chose this. I was reminded by a very, very cranky supervisor at the Veterans Administration when I was probably complaining about something back in the day that I thought complaining really made a difference and helped anything. It doesn't make a difference. It makes everything worse. I was reminded you chose this. So wherever you find yourself, look down and realize that most, if not all, those steps to where you are today, you chose the steps before those that got you to where you're standing. So make it work or plan the next step ahead. Guys, thank you for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it. David, it's been my pleasure. What a wonderful guest you've been. You guys check out David's account. Reach out to him if he can ever be of assistance, and me too. If you want a deeper dive in what I do, go over to school.com/mindset. That is SKOOL.com/mindset, where my mindset masterclass lives. We'd love to have you join. Free memberships. Come over there. We dive deep into conversation just like this every day. And have a great weekend, guys. And we'll catch you next time, next Friday. Monday at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, we have Monday Mindset Mojo coming up. Longer conversation. It's a panel interview. So if you're around, check in with us on Monday. If you can't check in, that video will be in the Mindset Masterclass. Have a great week. Thanks, David. I appreciate it, guys. Bye-bye
Thank
now.
you.